Yeah, it's so interesting because I think you were at the forefront 15 years ago. It's like the forefront of the beginning of people training jujitsu, like becoming more popular, right? Because we talk to people all the time now that they're in late teens, 18, 19 years old, early 20s, 15 years ago when they're training, and they're training now as black belts, but the next generation have been training since 4 or 5 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're 15 years old, and they've had 10, 12 years of training already, and their body is literally being made for jujitsu now. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be incredible to see what these people are like in their 20s and 30s. Well, one, they'll probably be broken. No, but do you feel like your body kind of like morphed into like being made for jiu-jitsu? Because 14 you're just starting puberty, and then you might, depending on, I don't know, I don't want to say that I know that
I
you
don't want to speculate
puberty.
on when I hit puberty.
I was like,
Josh was a late
okay.
bloomer.
Yeah.
No, but
so
like,
you said that there were any questions we could ask you. When did you hit puberty, Josh?
when'd you get your first armpit hair? Like, no, but you're still like very young. Like, do you feel like your body really kind of like morphed into being made for jiu-jitsu because you started so young?
So I had this conversation with one of my buddies the other day, and it was, I kind of like the start of it was, dude, I have lived more life doing jiu-jitsu than I have not doing jiu-jitsu at this point. I just turned 29. And so I'm like, I've been training for 15 years. I started jiu-jitsu when I was 14 years old. And so one, it's a little hard for me to picture my life before jiu-jitsu at this point, right? It's really hard for me to kind of go into, being able to train jiu-jitsu and say like, oh, well, this is what it was like before for me, right? What I started to notice though, is like as I grew up, there were certain parts of the jiu-jitsu journey that my students were struggling with. And I would think back and I would be like, man, I dealt with that. And now it's just become a part of me. It's just become something that I don't even think about. And so there are definitely certain strengths and certain flexibilities that are bizarre that I have that I go, oh, I think that just comes from being on the mat for so long. And there's something different about doing an art, a sport, when you're doing it with adults who are all kind of staying the same physically or just diminishing just a little bit physically. And you're like shooting through this point of your life where you're going from being a little boy into a man. And like, you really are, there really is something to that growth, I guess. I have a student that's a blue belt. He's 17, and we had been having this conversation, that same conversation of these guys that you've been fighting at juvenile at blue belt, they have been training since they were 2 or 3 years old. Yeah. And he's finally eligible, because he turns 18 this year. He was eligible to do an IBJJF tournament. And we had this conversation. He's like, man, it's going to be so tough. They're going to be adults. I'm like, dude, don't worry about that. I'm telling you, the adults are not going to be the level as the juveniles. What happens first match? Of course, he draws another 17-year-old who's a world champion and has been training since he was 2 years old and has a scholarship to wrestle collegiately. And
oh my gosh.
Of course, that's who he has. And it's back to, it felt like the juvenile division where he has a war with this kid. It's this amazing match. He ends up losing, but it was only a 3-person division. So we're going to get another match. And we're going to get to fight the number 1 seed who's won stuff at adult. And I'm like, hey, I promise you, it's going to be different. You're going to go with this adult, and he's not going to be able to handle your pace. He's not going to be able to handle your jiu-jitsu. And sure enough, he went with the adult, and he was up like 18-0 and submitted him. And it was one of those things like, yeah, dude, avoid the kids, avoid the high. I mean, obviously not every juvenile division's like that, but the highest level, the green belts and the blue belts, they have been training forever. They've been training as long as me, and so that's a tough battle.
Oh, yeah, if they look at me, I'm looking the other way. I'm like, I'll take the guy over there with the gray hair in his chin as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know. That's why I compete. If I compete, it's going to be in Masters. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't got to worry about no juveniles. I ain't trying to walk on the mat like, damn, is that kid even old enough to drive yet? He's about to whoop my ass, man.
Yeah, we see it in our class because we have some kids. We've been watching them. They started at like, 13, and they're like 17 now. And I'll laugh if we have a new adult class and they go to like take it easy on them. And then I'm watching the kid just smash him, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're gonna learn. Like,
Dude, that's
it's such
I've
an
been on
ego
both
check.
sides too. I've been, I've lived as the kid and I've lived as the adult, and it's exactly how you would expect being the kid and being like, man, I just beat down this grown man. This guy's got a mortgage and I just thrashed it, man.
He has a 401k. I don't even know what that is.
like he's all tired. He just got off his 16-hour shift
Yeah,
and
yeah,
barely
right.
made it to the gym.
You're like, listen, little dickhead. All right,
And you're like, hey, guess what I had? You ate a salad for lunch to make weight. I had Swedish fish, I had Cheetos for lunch, dude.
Yeah,
And I
no
just
doubt.
thrashed
Swedish
you.
fish, baby.